So the last couple of weeks, we have talked about the different levels of Reiki, kind of Reiki training and what happens in the classes. And then last week, we talked about the Reiki Masterclass. And so kind of at the end of time, we ran out of time. It really occurred to me that I wanted to talk also more in depth about the energy of the different symbols and how those, kind of correlate. We talked about them with the Reiki 1 and 2, but not so much the Reiki Master one. So we'll talk about that today too. And if you don't have Reiki Master symbols or you have a variety of them, Reiki works with us according to how we need it at the time. And so always feel empowered. If you have Reiki 1, feel empowered that I have seen the same levels of healing happening with a Reiki 1 practitioner as I have seen with a Reiki practitioner that's, been a Reiki master for 20 years. So just know the Reiki is always doing the work, and it doesn't quite have that level of like, well, you're not attuned to the master symbol, so I'm not coming in this situation. I think what the attunement really does is just expands your, I guess, energetic or spiritual muscles. And so it activates through intention. It activates through a very specific clarity that when you take a Reiki class, you are saying, I want to be connected to these higher frequencies of life force energy, and I want them to wake those up in me. So with the different levels that you do, you're just stating that next level of expansion. Some people will use Reiki for their own personal life. Some will share it with close family, friends. Some people plan to teach. Some people don't plan to teach, and Reiki is so compelling that people end up teaching. But people go through all the levels of advanced Reiki and Reiki training for every reason, from just personal development to, friends, family, to professional development. And then again, sometimes with the professional development, people are not even always aware that that's something they want to do or plan to do. And Reiki, the Reiki pathway can guide you there. One of the aspects of that decision-making with being professional with Reiki is always remember that everyone is going to have a Reiki practice. You will have your practices that you do that are meaningful to you. Not everybody who has a Reiki practice will want to have a Reiki business. If you have a Reiki business, you will always have a Reiki practice. That's always part of it. That would be the practices that you do, the things that you do when you connect with the energy. So the different levels of classes are really expanding into other levels of frequencies. And if we remember the idea of the Reiki energy is a very high frequency, it can be called in spiritual language, would be a very enlightened energy, divine energy, sources coming from God, from the divine, from all of the different ways that people can define it. And the energy can also be defined as coming from expansions of universal awareness. So for instance, if You are inclined to sacred geometry. It's going to take you deeper into the awareness of those frequencies at the higher consciousness levels. And so in the levels of training that you receive and kind of the practices that you develop, the Reiki energy, when you activate it or invite it, is what I think of, because I just think of me kind of giving it attention, like, okay, I'm inviting Reiki in this moment. But remembering the concept of it's entraining us. So it's going to lift. Entrainment means that it's going to lift you to that frequency. Your life force energy entrains to it. And so then, of course, that happens on a physical, cellular, and mental and emotional level as well, because it's activating your life force and training it into these higher frequencies. So the Reiki levels of classes are both the energy that you're receiving in the class, and then also the tools and techniques that you are going to use and learn so that you can work with the energy. So you have a physical way of doing it. And that's often one of the areas of confusion for people, thinking that the techniques are what Reiki is. The Reiki systems and lineages use techniques. The Reiki energy is the energy. The word Reiki means the energy. The rest of it is the practices that we use, the techniques that we use as physical beings to access what we think of as an invisible source of energy. But I think everything is made of it. So it's also physical and non-physical. So anyway, tonight I want to talk more about, last week we talked about kind of what you learn in a Reiki master class, why you might want to take a class, whether you plan to be professional with it, teach it, or you plan to have informal classes with, close family, friends, that type of thing, or it's all just for yourself. So this week, what we wanted to do is talk more about the energy of the master symbols and kind of an understanding of some of the differences, because different Reiki lineages are working with different symbols and different master symbols, and there's a variety. So just kind of having a conversation about them, and then I will just also talk about my own perception of them. The one thing that we teach in this lineage, which is the Usui Holy Fire 3 World Peace Reiki lineage, it's getting longer. But anyway, essentially Usui Holy Fire Reiki, is that the symbols are going to develop with you according to you. There are commonalities of things that we know about them. There are things that we can share that say, oh yeah, that's how I perceive it too, or that's how it's working for me also. But the energies of the symbols are going to teach you what they are from your inner truth, and where why are you inviting the energy? Why is it showing up for you? What are the questions you're asking? What are the intentions you're setting? And so it's going to respond to you from your own perceptions, your own truth, and then also mainly for your needs. Like why is it benefiting you? What does it do? How does it help you? Sometimes the energies are helping us to solve problems. Sometimes it's for our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health. And other times it's to be entirely engaged in our empowerment, to lift our consciousness into other levels of creativity, inner knowing, inner wisdom, and again, your inner truth and your inner authority. So anyway, all of the Reiki symbols do all of this. So whatever ones you are working with, just simply invite them, and you can invite them on the fly, like, okay, Reiki on. Mrs. Takata taught that, Reiki on, Reiki off. I never do the Reiki off, but the Reiki on all the time, like Reiki on. And so, that's our term for that is Reiki on the fly. And we wrote an article about that. So, and all the way to the very deep experiences you have, with Reiki, and how it can really take you into another perception, a higher perception. It entrains you into higher perceptions. So the different symbols do have a variety of experiences that we see that have commonality, and then also the perceptions and experiences with them that are unique and individual, because you are unique and individual. And it teaches you. And what we have seen in the history of Reiki and its evolution is that it has evolved itself with us and helping us to understand how we can work with it. And it has always adapted historically over time as it has evolved for each of the teachers teaching it. When you go back to some of the main teachers bringing it into the West, each of them taught how to work with Reiki energy from a unique perception. Usui Sensei, spiritual, Shinto, Buddhist, and very, very aware of religious practices, spiritual practices, a very learned man, well-traveled man, and working with Reiki in a spiritual, intuitive way. Then Dr. Hayashi needing to work with it from medical perception or perspective, working in the military, and then Mrs. Takata bringing it into the West. So we've seen the evolution of it over time, which is the basis for understanding that Reiki will teach you and help you evolve with its energies. So looking at the master symbols, so in the lineage that we are working with, the Usui Holy Fire lineage, in that lineage, the master symbols, there's a Holy Fire master symbol, and then also the Usui master symbol, which is DKM. So DKM's energy, that was actually innovated by Mrs. Takata in the 1970s. She's the one who brought it into the system of Reiki. And there's not really a clear history of how that happened for her. There is a theory that it was that symbol, the DKM symbol, is a master symbol in the Jo-Rei spiritual healing practices. And Iris Ishikura, who was one of Mrs. Takata's 22 Reiki masters, and her cousin was a Jo-Ray master. So it was thought that maybe there's a correlation there. That symbol is widely used in spiritual practices and would have been known by Usui Sensei, but in the history of how Reiki evolved, the Usui master symbol showed up in the system with Mrs. Takata. Usui and Hayashi worked with the first three symbols that you get in Reiki 1 and 2. And so that was the power symbol, the one that looks like a spiral, the mental emotional symbol, the one that looks like a dragon, and then the long kanji that is the distance symbol. And then Mrs. Takata, the DKM, the Usui master symbol, showed up in the history of Reiki somewhere in the mid-1970s with Mrs. Takata. And so she innovated that symbol into the system, and there was another expansion. And because of that energy of that symbol, it also brought in the ability to teach more people how to teach Reiki. It created that expansion because she developed the master class at the same time. But the energy of the symbol, when I first learned it in 2000, I was taught that it was only used in attunements and that was its only purpose. It wasn't a practitioner symbol. But I ended up with it as a practitioner symbol. And for me, it's that deep connection with the earth and the deep connection with the divine and unifying within me. And it's on a denser level because the Holy Fire Master symbol does that too. But it's when I say dense, I don't mean a lower than, it's just a more physical experience of that kind of earth and divine connection within the human awareness of your spirit. And when I first started working with it, one of the things that I noticed with it is that it started to bring people into alignment with being here on the earth. And the master symbol, its definition has more than one, but a couple of them are treasure house of the great beaming light, and also great being of the universe, shine on me and be my friend. So as that was showing up for me as a practitioner, what I came to understand is the treasure house of the great beaming light had multiple levels of it. So one of them is in your own body. Your body is a treasure house for your great beaming light, for your spirit. And then the great being of the universe, shine on me and be my friend. It really started healing the concept of a friendly great being, and that the world and the earth is friendly. And so one of the terms that I was working with at that time very closely, and still, but it was new at that time, was from a colleague of mine, Susan Pease Bannett, that talked about what she called earth adjustment disorder, and how many people feel like, they're like, where am I and what is this place? And it's very foreign and feeling it's very difficult to live here. And so I was seeing this symbol, this master symbol, the DKM, showing up for people and helping them to reconnect with themselves inside. And I was seeing that it was healing that sense of loneliness, because there was a new sense of belonging. And so that loneliness that, so many people can feel, even if you have lots of people around you and you're loved and you love others, or maybe none of that, that sense of loneliness can be such a hard human experience, of course. And so this symbol, when I started working with it, all of them do this because all of them bring in different levels of our life force. But today I was talking about the master symbols. And so then the next symbol that we're currently working with in this lineage, again, the Usui Holy Fire lineage, is the Holy Fire Master symbol. And that one was innovated with William Rand in 2014. And, I was working closely with him at the time and understanding the history of that. He did not know it was coming until it was there. And in retrospect, we could all look and go, oh, that's what this has been. That's what the energy is we're feeling. But it wasn't until the day of, like, there's this energy and it's called, it actually didn't even have a name yet. And the energy came in and told him that it wanted to take him to the next level of evolution for himself. And so, asked if he agreed to it. Did he say yes? And he did. And so that energy came in. And what I know about it is it's always been here too. We are recognizing it in a whole new way, with the freedom to engage with the energy, from the freedom that Reiki energy provides us in finding our own inner truth about the energy and the levels of frequencies that we're working with, the spiritual beings that we're working with. It's a very divine energy. The divine in the earth is just coming in hugely right now. And it has been, we can go all the way back to the beginning writings of Holy Fire, talking about the spirit of the earth and the divinity of the earth, and the earth being the first heaven. So for me, it's this next level of working within me to really reveal the divinity within myself and in everything else. At the same time, the complete awareness that I'm still in human consciousness. Still going to be human. I have human nature, living, not off the grid somewhere. And by off the grid, I don't mean, I mean like off in a cave somewhere. Because if you're off the grid, you're still working a very definite, earthly life when you're off the grid. So anyway, the Holy Fire symbol, master symbol, that one is also one that it keeps saying that it will continue to help us evolve to new levels of consciousness with it. As we're ready, the questions we ask and what we're ready to receive is how it shows us the next level of connection we can make with it. But on a very practical level, I think the Holy Fire Master symbol actually adds even more practicality to the awareness of being a divine being, having a human experience, and with the belonging in our human experience. Even when we need to use the energy to escape the being in the human awareness for a while. like when we go into the other realms that it can take us. And then also how when life is hard, it does help us navigate through that because it lifts and entrains us to levels of consciousness. I also want to clarify too that sometimes that's hard to do. And, you just have to be okay with, like, I'm not there today with it. I'm not, my frequency isn't up, and I think that that's part of it with the energy, is just allowing yourself to be in where you are and get to your inner truth. We know it's uncomfortable to be in the hard places, so most of us are looking for the tools and skills that can, get us there or get us to at least being in peace with those circumstances. So bringing us back to the energies of the master symbols, and there are other lineages that work with the master symbols in specific ways. So for instance, many lineages that you are going to work with on a master level to attune others, to be able to pass attunements on to others, possibly to teach others, that some of the lineages are that is going to happen with the Usui master symbol, the DKM. And you will take Reiki 1, Reiki 2, maybe Reiki 3A and 3B, and that will give you the attunements to that DKM symbol, which will give you the ability to pass on Reiki to others, and that is also a Reiki master level. Then in our lineage, in the master class, which is a 3-day class, you receive both the DKM, the Usui master symbol, and then you also receive the Holy Fire master symbol. So both of those are part of the master class. In another master class of a different lineage, for instance, we just did a podcast with Walter Lubeck, and it'll be posted, I think, next week, maybe. But anyway, he has other master symbols with his lineages, Rainbow Reiki, and he has other master symbols. When I was originally attuned with William Rand, we worked with the Usui Tibetan master symbols. And so many of you here may be working with the Usui Tibetan symbols too. And in that case, there was the Om symbol, the Usui DKM, and then two Tibetan master symbols. And they were part of the master class. It was still a 3-day class, but all the attunements attuned you to those different symbols too. And I worked with the Tibetan master symbols for 16 years, longer. Yeah, 16 years. So anyway, you'll be guided to the energies that you are guided to, the systems you're guided to, the lineages, the teachers. Sometimes that's even all the way to convenience. Like, when is this going to work out for me and fit into my schedule? And sometimes you're guided that way. And then other times people tell me that, they just see a teacher, know, oh, that's who I need to work with. So just let your guidance show up on that level and with the lineages. But just to talk a little bit about the energy of the master symbols, again, whether they are for your personal development and expansion, entrainment, to higher frequencies, and that is for you. I think it's really important to say one of the things you'll find with Reiki is the energy does not require you to choose any specific path with it other than what is your path with it. And I found for myself that it did compel me to go this direction. I would have to say that I always knew that, now I know that I always knew I was looking for something like this. Like, having been raised Catholic, there were parts of me that thought I could have been a nun. And, I really didn't have the personality for that. But, in my mind, I've always had a spiritual, like, perception and want to engage in spiritual understanding. So let's see, there's some questions here. Is there anything I need to, what does that look like when I work with the symbol? So working with the symbol looks like something different for everybody. And for me, I have particular ways that I'm doing things with symbols that I like to use, depending on what I'm using with it. I also really enjoy philosophical thought. So out of anything I like to think about when I'm just being random is, questions about things like, what does this symbol do? What does it mean? And, kind of wait for those insights to come in and hear while my mind goes off of doing something else. So that could be one version of working with them. And then another version of that is in my own self Reiki, that I find that I observe what I work with. What's showing up and working with is, it's just, there's just not a great word for what I mean. Activate with it and train with it, engage with it. And so be aware of it, pay attention with it. And when I say pay attention, again, one of the things I think I've learned with that Holy Fire Master symbol, it has taught me that there's a different way of me paying attention than feeling like I'm required to study it a certain way. Now, if I want to study it a certain way, then I'm happy to do it that way. But Reiki has really taught me that each of us gets to engage with it in our own way. And I've learned over the years, like, for years, I didn't work with the mental emotional symbol very much. Like, I always activated it, but I didn't engage with it a lot. And then I noticed that all of a sudden it started showing up all the time. And in fact, sometimes I would try to do things in a particular routine and it would show up first. Like, no matter what, I would try to draw the symbols a particular way, because that was the original lineage I was taught, was that you had to do things in a sequence, like had to be done exactly this way. But now we know that you can do it in a sequence because that is your practice. But Reiki is not requiring the sequence in order for it to work. It will work with you out of sequence too. So I learned that because I'm kind of an out of sequence person. And so I had to test it. I was like, I gotta see, because I was taught originally, like, you have to do it exactly this way. At the very original lineage that I was trained in 2000 was very strict and very much like, do it exactly like this. And so just to address that, different lineages teach their techniques particular ways. And so when you're in that lineage, then you practice those ways. And, that's true of all the different spiritual things that I've done over the years is, with the different teachers is you practice the way you are learning at that time. And you can make a different decision later, but practice it that way at that time. And for many people, having the exact way to do it every time is very meaningful to them, almost ceremonial for them. And so there's, it's not a better than that I like to be able to do things my way. It's just a personal preference for me. So understanding that that's true, and some of the different lineages are much more strict about how you do things with the symbols, working with the symbols, how you're doing that. And then sometimes I think that I'm almost a little bit hard for people because I'm always saying, well, let Reiki show you how to do it, and it will show you. But at the same time, still always giving you the foundation and basic practices, techniques, so that you can learn your way. So in other words, in each of the classes, again, we work with outlines. You have techniques, you have attunements, you have practice time, learning how to use the Reiki symbols in each of the levels. And then at the same time, allowing for the freedom to, kind of use your intuition with it and let it show you your ways too. Okay, so are there any books with more history on the different symbols? Yeah, the Modern Reiki Method for Healing by Hiroshi Doi is on reiki.org. And then, yeah, Franz Steena's new book, The Way of Reiki. Walter Lubeck wrote the big book of Reiki symbols, 600 pages. I think down here. So there's a lot of different ones. The main thing that I will tell you when you are reading different Reiki books is that, everybody can't write in every paragraph that there's lots of right ways to do things. So just understand that you are reading different people's uses of Reiki, how it's working for them. And then also, sometimes things are written as in an absolute, like this is the absolute. Just know that there's a lot of right ways to practice Reiki. And I'm not thinking of any book specifically. I'm just saying in general. You'll read some varieties on the history. You'll read different uses of the symbols, things like that. So just allow it to come through and also, go through you in the way it works for you. Yes, you can intertwine the different Reiki symbols from different disciplines. So when we talk about, are you using a multitude of Reiki symbols from various lineages as part of your practice, that is one answer. If you are teaching a class, you would want to teach the methods of that lineage. So, for instance, if you're teaching Usui Tibetan Reiki, you would teach the teachings of that lineage and those symbols. If you are teaching a class that originated more in the Reiki Alliance lineages, you would be practicing those ways. And Holy Fire, you would be teaching holy fire. So you can teach the different lineages, and as a practitioner, absolutely working with all the symbols. One of the things that happens, first of all, in the lineage, just because it's, you will have, like, for instance, we all have outlines that we are working with in this lineage anyway, but how we talk about those outlines, how that shows up is unique and individual. If you were to start adding symbols from other lineages into a specific class, now you have to have all the materials for it and copyright things and things like that. So there's also the honoring of the lineage you're teaching. And then also so that your students know that, for instance, if they're taking a Holy Fire Reiki class, that that's what they're receiving, that is, they can plan on that being the curriculum that they're learning. But as far as on a personal level or even a professional level as a practitioner, absolutely, you can use all your symbols.